I always remember in those, do you remember in the, when was it, 70s or 80s or whatever, when the books by Carlos Castanedas were all, woo, his work with the sorcerers and all that kind of stuff. And I never forgot this one little piece that his, I don't even, Don Juan, his sorcerer teacher, that at a certain point in your spiritual development, he'd say, you need to spend time with a petty tyrant. And I loved that. And what he meant by it, and what he was getting at, because what he was saying is, about the time that you feel like you're really quite clear and free and everything's flowing and everything, that you need somebody that's basically a pain in the ass. You need some version of a petty tyrant to get in there and push your buttons a little bit. To get down there, and you may feel really free, but there's a freedom when you're in a room undisturbed, and then there's a freedom when you're full of people that are disagreeing with you, or they have a petty tyrant. A petty tyrant is somebody you cannot please, right? Ever, right? They don't like anything. Usually the kind of people you don't want to be around. And in Don Juan, it said, at a certain point, you need that. Now, I'm not suggesting you go out and, find a petty tyrant and hang out with him, but there was a really important truth going on there, which was we can have had very deep spiritual shifts or awakenings, but it's when it's put to, we see the depth and the thoroughness of that. It is not proved when we're undisturbed, when we're not challenged. It is proved when we are challenged. It is proved when somebody is kind of pushing your buttons a little bit. That's when we really see, like, okay, where do I go when I'm challenged? Do I go back into my conditioned pattern? Do I throw away the one thing that unites us? The one thing that is the same within us is the absolute nature of consciousness itself. What's going on in your consciousness is just particular to you. That's not the same. You have your own thoughts, feelings, experiences. It's different from one person to the next. But the nature of consciousness itself is the same. That's why I often say, in awakening, ultimately there is no hierarchy. There's no more or less. There's no better. There's no, my awakening is 10 times better than your awakening. If we really see the nature of consciousness, then we see the nature of consciousness. Or as they say in a different context, there's no such thing as a little bit pregnant. You're pregnant or you're not. You've seen the nature of your own conscious experience, or you haven't. There's no kind of little about it. Somebody may be more or less established in it. They may be able to remain connected with it in greater and greater and greater challenges in life. For that's the part of the gradual part of awakening can happen the snap of a finger. But to embody it through more and more challenging aspects of life is not a sudden event. Certain amounts of it will be sudden. I mean, like I said, it's often life-changing when we really realize the nature of our being. But to be able to live there and function from there, because of course to me, the end of the day, if we just have a realization and we feel totally realized when we're in a room by ourselves, I don't know, so what? You're not going to live in a room by yourself most of your life. That may be a thing we may need. We may be served by having a little time to ourselves. That's absolutely helpful. But not only the depth, but the usefulness of it, the thing that makes it relevant and meaningful, is how it impacts the way we move through life, the way we respond to the challenges. Because I can tell you from personal experience, awakening will not get you a pass on the challenges of life. I think a lot of people kind of look at it that way. Well, the awake people, like the really enlightened ones, they seem to be pretty happy and at peace. They must not be dealing with all the junk I am, you know. They must never get sick, and, I'm sure everybody loves them, and, But it doesn't give you a pass on the challenges of life. What it can give you is a pass on driving yourself nuts with the challenges of life. Just a way of saying suffering is generally optional. Once you have a roof over your head, which everybody does not, once you have enough food in your stomach, and plenty of people do not, once you have the basic elements of your physical survival met, and unfortunately not everybody does. In fact, there's a whole lot of people that do not. And that's a kind of suffering. If you're cold and you're starving, or you can't feed your children or something, you are not going to feel good about that. But once we have that met, from that point on, suffering is optional. Suffering is optional. It's an inside job. It all has to do with how you're interpreting what's happening. Or if you even actually give much value to your interpretation of what's happening. That's the good news, right? The good news is suffering is optional. That kind of suffering is optional. And most of it is having some deep connection to the natural state of our own conscious experience, of our consciousness itself.